Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's Tyler James Milliken here as we study the main points of the Bible and attempt to unpack the main point of the book of Numbers from memory. Now, at the end of this video, we're also going to almost physically fight with Bart Ehrman and his lackeys as we look at their summary of the main points of books just like this one. Now, looking at the book of Numbers, we are moving deeper into Bible reading plan territory. You've really got to understand what's happening here in the book of Numbers with some of these lengthier lists and things that are taking place. The book of Numbers is largely to prepare God's people for spiritual warfare. So why do we have these census lists? Why do we have all this organization of the troops and the tribes and so forth? This is to number up the strength of Israel and arrange the people for holy warfare. And so there's a great spiritual warfare that undergirds the entirety of the book of Numbers. We still have commands for holiness and purity among the people, so we're building on everything that we've learned in our previous study of the book of Leviticus, because to move with God, to be on God's side for warfare, we must be prepared for purity and for holiness, because it is a holy war in the midst of unholy adversaries. Now, what we find, though, is that there's a major movement in this book in the journey from Sinai, where the tabernacle outline was given, to Kadesh. And then eventually, of course, we're moving toward the promised land, and Deuteronomy will be the staging ground for that in the second giving of the law. But the journey from Sinai to Kadesh is extremely important. What do we remember of Kadesh? Why is Kadesh so important? Well, Kadesh is incredibly important because this is a place of great apostasy and rebellion for the people of God in the midst of their Exodus journey. So if what we've seen all along has been God's perfect holiness, God's perfect faithfulness toward his people, the book of Numbers begins the record of the unfaithfulness of God's people on our side over and against his perfect faithfulness to guide us and preserve us. And so what we really have in Numbers is a series of rebellions from God's people. Miriam and Aaron speak out against Moses in rebellion in chapter 12, rebelling against his leadership. The people are rebelling as soon as the spies return with a good report. No one wants to believe them. They say, how is God going to deliver us from these people? They think these people in the promised land are bigger than their God. They rebel. They don't believe the spies' message. Right after this, Moses intercedes for God, but what are they going to do? Rebellion. Once again, you have the rebellion of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and the mouth, as it were, of hell opens up to swallow them. Hades, if you prefer, Gehenna, same place, by the way. Don't get me started. It's all headed to the lake of fire. It opens up to swallow Korah, Dathan, and Abiram in their rebellion against God. Now, as we go further down, we also have the issue of Baal Peor in Numbers 25, and everything that's happening with Balaam and Baal Peor is attempting to lure and tempt Israel away from their God. And so the people of God are constantly tempted, tried, tested in holy war against the issue of rebellion. And so this does involve idolatry and immorality of the seventh commandment violation variety. So you have some in-depth issues there at Baal Peor. So looking at the issue in Kadesh, the high point of this book, I believe at the heart of this book, is the good report of the spies as we prepare for the promise of entering into the land of rest. And so the promised land, is a great picture of salvation and entering into the inheritance of God's kingdom, his perfect rest, perfect salvation, to dwell where God's promised people dwell in his promised place. And what you have in Numbers 13 is a good report from two of the spies, that's Joshua and Caleb, but generally speaking, the majority of the people actually rebel. So if we head over to Numbers 14, what we have here at the heart of the book is a response of unbelief over and against the promises of God. And so you have this statement, Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who would spy out the land, tore their clothes, right? Moses and Aaron are falling on their faces in the presence of the assembly. Why? Because all the people are saying, let's get back to Egypt. This is anti-gospel. This is anti-promised land. This is anti-salvation. This is apostasy. And this is right at the heart of the book of Numbers here. And so the true leaders of God, the remnant of faithful leaders, Moses, Aaron, Caleb, Joshua, they're ready to intercede, and they're saying, stop the madness. The land that we spied out is exceedingly good. Everything God promised is there. But what is in between you and the promises of God? It's warfare. It's warfare. And the warfare is fierce. The adversaries appear mighty. But they are not mightier than God. And this is why Caleb and Joshua are saying, if the Lord is pleased with us, then he'll bring us into the land and he'll give it to us. What are these giant adversaries to God? The land has everything God promised. You didn't think it came with adversaries? The kingdom comes with blessings and with tribulations. So they say, do not rebel against the Lord. Don't fear the people of the land. Have fear in God in the reverent sense of faith. That's a synonym for faith in the Old Testament. Don't get it exegetically twisted. They will be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them. Why? The Lord is with us. Yahweh's not with them. Yahweh's with us. So don't fear them. Have reverent faith and love in Yahweh fear. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Now, we're getting at the main point of the book of Numbers here. Everyone is ready to stone Caleb and Joshua to death for trusting the promises of God. Now, what is stoning according to Old Testament ceremony and ritual law? This is not a wild and unruly mob that has just lost their mind and they're just randomly looking for the closest things with which they could pick them up and do harm. No, this is formal legal execution according to Old Covenant law. They want to execute them as though they're false prophets for testifying the truth of God's promises. This is dark and abject rebellion in the book of Numbers, and this is the great warning at the heart of the book of Numbers. So then what happens? The glory of Yahweh appeared in the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. So Yahweh says to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? And how long will they not believe in me? This is the key at the heart of the book. Despite all his faithfulness, the signs and wonders, everything he's done in their midst. So what's going to happen? Judgment on the unbelievers. All those who didn't believe of the previous generation are going to fall and die in the wilderness. But Caleb and Joshua are going to make it through as a great type of the remnant of God's people that would follow the same pattern of faith in God's promises against the rebellion and apostasy all around them. Now that's a lot, but as we're looking at the main point of the book of Numbers, we've seen, of course, this is all very closely related. What we have in the book of Numbers is the message of faith for the believing remnant in the midst of apostasy and rebellion. And so we could say here the need for faith for the believing remnant in the midst of apostasy and rebellion. It is saving faith at the heart of this book that gets the people of God through their trials and into the promised land. By the way, a colleague of mine, James N. Beavers, is working on a phenomenal study of the Old Testament background of how they understood this certainly would have been the main point of the book of Numbers in ancient Judaism, because they had a view of three major apostasies in world history. We think of the fall of Adam as human beings. Certainly that is central as a great apostasy and moment of rebellion. That's the alpha point of rebellion for humanity. But in Judaism, they focused on these three: the fall of the angels in the angelic rebellion in the heavenly realm, the flood and the rebellion of humanity from which God had to destroy most of the known world, redeeming only a remnant of saved people who believed in him by faith. Very similar theme here we see throughout the scriptures to Numbers. And then thirdly here, the rebellion at Kadesh. Why? Because this was anti-faith, anti-promises, anti-salvation. It was the rebellion against the good testimony that God would give his people the land of promise. Now, finally, we see this fleshed out ever so clearly in the New Testament as well. And there are some great warnings and applications for us. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me, God says, as in the day of testing or trial in the wilderness where your fathers tested me. tried me by testing me, saying they saw my works for 40 years. God was angry with that generation. They always go astray in their heart. These are heart level issues. They did not know God's ways, so he swore in his wrath that they would not enter into his rest. This is all based on the rebellion at Kadesh and the surrounding rebellions in Israel's movement through the wilderness, just as we've seen in Numbers. So who was it that provoked it? Didn't all those who come out of Egypt come out with Moses? But wasn't it with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness, that were cursed? To whom did he swear? But to those who were disobedient? The key here is it's unbelief versus actual faith. We see that they were not able to enter into the rest of salvation because of their unbelief. Therefore, let us fear, because we have a promise remaining to enter into rest, lest any one of us would seem to fall short of it, because we have good news preached to us just like they did. How? They had the promise of God's salvation in the promised land. His kingdom would be established. This was good news, gospel message in the Old Testament. We have good news. They had good news, but it did not profit them. Why? It wasn't united with faith in those who heard it. So it is we who have believed that enter into the rest of God's promised land. This is the same exhortation that we get in for us as New Testament believers, just as it was only a believing remnant that entered into the midst of apostasy and rebellion in the Old Testament. Well, the question then is, how would you articulate and put a fine point on the main point of the book of Numbers here? Go ahead and leave us a comment and drop a note in the chat box below. Let us know how you would express the main point. Oh, and we forgot one thing. We actually forgot how our friends in Bart Ehrman's camp actually handled this one. We're going to have to deal with that next time. So sorry for that, everyone. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I'll have to tack that on. We don't have the direct connection. This is coming from my screenshot today. So keep it hanging. Maybe I'll drop it in a comment for this one below. And we'll see you next time in our study of the main points of all the scriptures.